Okay, shalom. This is Gene Keener with Simchat Yeshua Messianic Fellowship, and we are on live for our Wednesday study in Galatians plural, I guess. And we're going to be in 5c, third section of chapter 5 of the letter to Galatians by Rabbi Shaul, otherwise known as Paul the Apostle. Paul is his English name, Shaul is his Hebrew name. They actually don't mean the same thing, but that's okay. Let me see. What else are we going to do here? You know what? This is why it sounds funny in my ear, because I don't usually have the headphone on when I'm talking straight into the microphone on the computer. So hold on a second. Let me change my technology. Okay, that should work out. Oh, that's easier on my ear. Anyways, all right. This is Simchat Yeshua Messianic Fellowship, and that's spelled SIMCHATYESHUA. You can find us online at simchatyeshua.org, or you can find us on Facebook at Simchat Yeshua. You can get information about where we meet and how we meet over on the website. And let me see. Let me do the list of all the YouTube things I'm supposed to say. Please subscribe, like, tell a friend, and subscribe. I said that, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're made aware of the live chats when they come up. Also, if you like to support the channel or the congregation, you can find a means on the website simchatyeshua.org. Okay, I'm going to vamp for a few more minutes, wait to see who's going to come on, but in the meantime, there's a number of things I'd like to explain before we begin, because Galatians is such a misunderstood and mistaught letter that it takes a lot of explaining. We have some splaining to do here. So, Shalom Ruhama. Oh no, Carolyn had a stroke in Virginia. Are you going to go out to see her? Oh, that's too bad. Okay, yeah, let me know. So, the letter to the Galatians was written, it came about the same time as Acts 15, roughly the same time. And the question was what to do with all these Gentiles who are coming to faith in Messiah. And especially in the Galatians issue, the Spirit of God was in the people that were Gentiles, and that miracles are happening around them. But what happened was some people came up from Jerusalem. This is the same argument in Acts 15. Came up from Jerusalem claiming to have authority from James. All right, thank you. Yeah, just let me know. Claiming to have authority from James, that all the Gentiles must convert to become Pharisees in order to be acceptable to God and to the Jewish community. Paul writes his letter back to the Galatians. We've had this argument before. You know that's not necessary. You cannot improve your relationship with God by following man-made traditions. And not that Paul is anti-tradition. He identifies himself as a Pharisee in the strictest sect of the Pharisees. However, he does not require it of Gentiles to follow that same walk. Rather, what is incumbent upon Gentiles is to learn to obey God, such as Acts 15:21, and then learn as you go. And you're going to hit your own equilibrium as to how much tradition you want to have and how much you don't. But as long as you are cognizant of God's commands and you are following after them or learning to, that's sufficient. And so Paul's argument in this letter to the Galatians is just that. He points out that the Spirit of God is in the Galatian Gentiles, and miracles are happening around them. So there's nothing about being a Pharisee that can improve on that relationship. It's completely unnecessary. This argument, by the way, is exactly the same as amongst Orthodox today. Um, there's a dastardly emotional ploy that's done by the Orthodox to Messianic Gentiles who say, "Oh no, you can't be one of us. You're not good enough. You have to make conversion in order to be acceptable." And people get suckered into that all the time, and then they end up in a worse condition than they were before. Um, and what happens is, this is what Paul explains in his letter, is if you volunteer to make that conversion and you promise with your lips that you will follow all that they teach you and all they tell you to do, then you obligate yourself to do it, and now you're stuck with it. That is the point that Paul's making. Now, the circumcision. Okay, the circumcision comes up, and there are basically two circumcisions you have to be aware. First is the biblical one. Okay, a young male of Israeli birth must be circumcised on the 8th day. If a Gentile foreigner wants to come and be close to Israel, they are to take a circumcision so they can observe the Passover. Okay. Now, if you're worried about that, don't, because nobody has a proper kosher Passover these days, because God also told Israel that all sacrifices, and especially the Passover sacrifice, must be done at his temple or tabernacle, which doesn't exist. So there's no purely proper Passover Seder that goes on anywhere. So, what we do basically then is a memorial and a teaching and education on what is Passover and what's all the details about it. But so if you're a Gentile and you're not circumcised, it's okay. Okay. You may find that at some point in time you may wish to pursue if you're a male, but that'll be your choice. And that's strictly if you want to be observant to God's commands. No one's going to put that pressure on you because somebody else thinks you got to do it. It's like all the other commandments. God will tell you when it's time to do it, and no one needs to put you on any kind of tension or pressure about that. Okay, last little bit I want to talk about before I get into the reading is where am I? Okay, is law, the word law in Galatians. Paul uses the word law in his writings at least 4 different ways, 2 of which he uses in Galatians, the letter to the Galatians. Law, in one context, he uses to mean Torah, which means the first 5 books of the Bible, or by extension, the whole of the Bible. So sometimes he talks about law, he's referring to Torah. And other times when he uses the word law, he's talking about tradition, what we know now in modern terminology as oral Torah or oral law. In order to keep that separate in people's minds, I don't use the word law when I'm talking about the Pharisees or the Orthodox. I call them the Pharisee rules or the Orthodox rules. Don't call them law so you don't get confused. Okay, at least that's how I do it that way. And you'll find that as you read the context of Galatians, it'll become clear which law he's speaking of. And that's what we need to follow. So when we see law, we have to figure out which law. And when he's talking about circumcision, which circumcision? Okay, now having said that, let's get a running start into our text for today. We're going to start in verse 11, but I want to take a little running start starting at verse 7. And forgive me, I'm recovering from some eye issues, and my reading goes wonky fairly easily. And I just had my right eye done with a new cataract. This is Monday morning. So I'm still, that eye is still very opaque and fuzzy completely. In my left eye, I can read some. Okay, and even that's kind of fuzzy and messy. They're telling me I got to get some more work done for things to clear up. And so things are not as well done as I thought they'd be. Anyways, make a short story long. Galatians chapter 5, starting in verse 7, let's take a run into our text. You ran well. Who hindered you from obeying the truth? This persuasion does not come from him who calls you. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. I have confidence in you, in the Lord, that you will have no other mind, but he who troubles you shall bear his judgment, whoever he is. Okay, so that's a run up to our verses for today. And if you want to get more detail on that, you can pull up last week's lesson and catch up. Okay, verse 11 and 12, we're only going to do two verses today. There was enough commentary and stuff going on with this that it warrants just doing to the two verses. So, chapter. Verse 11. And I, brethren, if I still preach circumcision, why do I still suffer persecution? Then the offense of the cross has ceased. I could wish that those who trouble you would even cut themselves off. Okay, so that's our bit for today, our shtick. And let me get over to, if I can find it. There we are. Okay. This is our handout sheet. I don't know if you can pull it down from this by copying my screen or not. I don't know. We're supposed to have copies of these up on the website, so you can pursue the website and see if they're there. I did this one on Sunday evening because I knew I was going to be messed up for Monday. And so I got this done ahead of time. Okay, so commentary, verses 11 and 12. The stumbling block of the cross, faith in the crucified and risen Messiah, can do what man-made rituals cannot do, give Jew and Gentile a common hope in the world to come. Okay, that's one commentator. Okay. And now for our text. And I, brethren, if I still preach circumcision, why do I still suffer persecution? Then the offense of the cross has ceased. Or, but I, brethren, if circumcision yet I proclaim, why yet am I persecuted? Then has been done away offense of the cross. That's Englishman's Greek New Testament. I say this every week just so you don't get offended at my pronunciations or stuff that I do. My Greek is pretty bad. I never went to seminary, and so I've learned pretty much ad hoc my entire life, and gotten fairly decent at translating Hebrew, Greek, not nearly so. And so I'm sort of fair to middling, if that much, maybe. But I get lost in the genders and tenses of verb and noun tenses and stuff, and numbers and genders. So I'm not as good at the Greek as I think I am, and therefore I like to use Englishman's Greek New Testament just because it seems to be more of a word-for-word translation, which is why the syntax lays out a little bit different, and that's okay. If it starts to sound like a Star Wars character, that's okay. At least you know where the people writing the script got some of their ideas. Okay, so is circumcision what I'm still proclaiming, not complaining, proclaiming? Why yet am I persecuted? Okay. So if circumcision was the issue, it wouldn't be an issue. Okay. If I still preach circumcision, that is, if I still require Gentiles to become Jews and Pharisees to be a part of God's family, okay, part number one. Part number two, why do I still suffer persecution? It would be illogical for the Pharisees to persecute Shaul if he was teaching the same thing as they were. Okay, and the word persecuted means to be driven out, to be pushed out, to be driven out, to be driven away. So the point being is, if Paul was basically from the Jewish point of view at that time Gentiles are merely are fodder for the hellfire, there's really not a lot of desire to go out and win the Gentiles of the world to Judaism, either in the Pharisees at that time or in Orthodox of today. They're just as happy to let them all die and fry. So if Paul had no interest in the Gentiles, there would be no issue with who Messiah is. Okay, Messiah at this point, and we'll get to the commentaries, and this will flesh it out. Messiah was already established truth. Okay, Judaism of that time had to deal with, why is this character Yeshua so popular, and what do we need to do as far as our response? Well, the eventual formal official response was, no, he was not Messiah, and eventually they became persecution against believers. But at various different times through the time that Paul was doing his thing, there the basic anybody just some plain Gentile, if they wanted to convert to being a Jew, eventually they would be able to, but not easily. But if someone who is a Gentile believer in Yeshua, then there's an interest in converting these people in order to turn these Gentile believers into, quote, proper, unquote, Jews. So in this sense, well, let me get into the commentators. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. Why was Paul persecuted by others inside and outside of the Judaic sect or the way? Not because he taught Yeshua was the Messiah, because he taught the good news to Gentiles, and they did not need to become Jews to have a part in the world to come. Okay, and that's the Messianic point of view. It's not the Orthodox or the Pharisee point of view, but that's the Messianic point of view. You don't have to become Jewish to get saved. You don't have to be Jewish to be part of the family. In fact, the last two chapters ended with astounding news that if you belong to Yeshua, if you belong to Messiah, you are Abraham's seed, or or that we are the seed of the promise, not the seed of the works of the hands of man. And so, we as Gentiles are included in part of God's kingdom, even if we're Gentiles. We don't have a requirement to convert. It is expected of you, again, out of Acts 15:21, that you find a synagogue and learn how to live by God's commandments. But it's not a hard, fast rule that you must complete a process in 2 years, or you must do this and you must do that immediately. Rather, it's up to that individual and the spirit that lives within them to show when is a good time to begin following which commandment. And I find that it works very well when you don't push people. They're going to come to an understanding, and they're going to come to what they want to do. And it's going to be walking closer to God's ways in the long run. Okay. In Paul's eyes, the fact of Yeshua as Messiah was not the bone of contention. The historical and factual Messiah could not be denied. What was the problem was the freedom that Gentiles could exercise by not being circumcised into Pharisaic Judaism. That's the big deal. Okay. Now, what does this mean? The circumcision, I touched on it early on, but I didn't give the full explanation. When a Gentile wants to become a Jew, of course, at first they'll reject it to find out if these people are really sincere. But once you prove to the community that you're sincere, you'll go through classes. It takes about 2 years. You'll go to the Bet Din, which means it's house of judgment. You'll be questioned and confirmed if whether or not you indeed are sincere and knowledgeable enough to join the community. And if they accept you, the last things you go through is a tevilah, or mikveh, a baptism. You go down a Gentile, you come up as a new creation, as a Jew. And as a new creation, what are you supposed to do? If you're a guy, you get circumcised, okay? And the tradition is you're to be circumcised within the 8 days after that baptism. This is the circumcision Paul is talking about in Galatians, not the circumcision of the Bible, the 8-day old boy, or the the Gentile who wants to come and be part of Israel, getting a circumcision, but rather the conversion to becoming a Pharisee. And the process is similar even to today amongst Orthodox. So if someone's telling you you need to be Orthodox in order to be acceptable, that's not true. And you can rely on Paul's explanation in Galatians that it's not necessary. Okay. Um, okay. Let me move on here. Okay. Then the offense of the cross has ceased. What was the offense? That Jews and Gentiles have equal standing before God, and that a membership in God's family is based on faith in Yeshua's sacrifice, and not on genetics. Okay, you follow up with that in Yeshayahu, Isaiah 53, 10 to 12, and also 56, 6 to 7. Oops, I knew there was something I missed. I need to add that in afterwards. And also Yechezkel, Ezekiel 47, 21 to 23. Okay, and I cited these in here because they are very important. Okay. Yet it pleased the Lord, this is Isaiah 53:10. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him, he has put him to grief. When you make his soul an offering for sins, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see the labor of his soul and be satisfied. By his knowledge my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul unto death. Okay. Isaiah 56 is talking about the Gentile who comes near and takes pleasure in God's Sabbath and to pursue his commandments, that he will have a place. He will have a place not only in Israel, but may be called to be part of the priests. Okay. And I forgot to list that here. Okay. Further on, Yechezkel. Thus you shall divide the land among yourselves, according to the tribes of Israel. It shall be that you will divide it by lot as an inheritance for yourselves, and for the strangers who dwell among you and who bear children among you. They shall be to you as native born among the children of Israel. They shall have an inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel. And it shall be that in whatever tribe the stranger dwells, there you shall give him an inheritance, says the Lord. Here's the point of this. And this is actually confirmed in more specific terminology elsewhere, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But the Gentile, wherever he finds himself to dwell, he will be considered as one who is native born to that tribe. In other words, he's not going to be a stranger forever, but rather, once he finds a place to settle in, if that's among Naphtali, he will be considered Naphtali. Okay, and so that's God's design. Now, the Pharisaism of this day and the orthodoxy of our day likes to be very exclusive. Yet you can see by the language, God's design is inclusive. God's design is to bring people into the family. Okay, and the nice way to make it into the family is to make it easy. Okay, so how does one get into the family? By looking upon the sacrifice of Yeshua. That is, Yeshua is Hebrew, which means salvation. Jesus is the English version of the Greek version of the Hebrew, still means salvation. Okay, it's still the same name, and it's a proper name version of the word salvation. Okay. Okay. Okay, I lost my spot there. Okay. Again, verse 11. Apparently, there was a group of people, call them the out of touch, whom we have not encountered prior to this verse, who had not kept up to date with what Shaul was actually saying and doing. They claimed he was still preaching that circumcision is necessary for Gentiles who wish to join God's people, as he had before as he was before he was saved. The Judaizers misappropriated this false rumor as evidence that Shaul himself approved their insisting on circumcision of Gentile believers. Okay. Shaul's answer makes implicit reference to a second hitherto unmentioned group. I will call them the Super Jews. They are zealous among non-Messianic Jewish missionaries, the kind Yeshua would go about overland and sorry the okay excuse missionary the kind Yeshua said would go over land and sea to make one proselyte, such as that out of Matthew 23:15. It is interesting that when Shaul wrote, in contrast with now, his proclaiming Yeshua as the crucified Jewish Messiah would have caused him no difficulties in the Jewish community, yet he continued preaching that Gentiles who come to faith in Yeshua must then be converted to Judaism. It was not because of his preaching about the execution stake that made the super Jews object to it and persecuted him. By itself, Shaul said that would cause no offense whatsoever. Rather, it was his claim that Gentiles can join the people of God without getting circumcised, that is, the conversion. Shaul insisted that trust alone was sufficient, and for this the super Jews persecuted him. Their persecution refutes the Judaizers' false claim that Shaul is still preaching that circumcision is necessary. Okay. More commentary. Paul is saying to his Gentile disciples in Galatia, you are opening yourselves to the influence of people desirous of giving you social status. Actually, also giving themselves social status as being the ones to convince you to convert. If I am preaching the same message as theirs, why are you driving me away? Do you not understand that in pledging your allegiance to those who preach circumcision, you and they alike are directly dismissing and depreciating the Messiah's crucifixion? Okay. And that kind of makes the point in a nutshell. Okay. It is nowadays things are a little different. Judaism in general rejects Yeshua as Messiah. And in addition to that, it annoys them that we embrace Gentiles as Gentiles without forcing them to convert. So it's a twofer today. But at the time that Shaul was writing this, the person and the work of Messiah was so well known that there was no arguing against it. Okay, so why was Paul persecuted? For preaching obedience to biblical halakha, not Pharisaic halakha. Okay, now we talked about halakha before, and let me explain again if you weren't there when that happened. Halakha means the walk, and it's a phrase that simply references how do you live out the commands of God on a daily basis. And so as somebody's teaching you how to follow the commandments, he's teaching you halakha. Okay, well, that phrase, of course, then expands to anything that people do that somebody teaches another as halakha. So you have biblical halakha, and you also have traditional halakha, and you have Pharisaic halakha, and you have Orthodox halakha. Okay, so just understand, halakha means the walk, and if you understand that, it comes out of it's quoted out of Joel 3:3. How can two walk together unless they be in agreement? The word walk there is lacha. How can two walk together? Lech, no, that's a command tense. Holech, sorry. How can two, holchim would be plural. Okay. Holchim would in the text, but halacha is the noun, the walk. Okay. So, obedience is obedience to biblical halakha, which is Paul's teaching, not Pharisaic halakha. So not the Pharisaic lifestyle, but the biblical lifestyle. And if you're looking for a messianic community, that's what you want to find. Not that tradition is bad, not that tradition is evil. There's actually good stuff in tradition that helps you with your walk. But you do need to be judicious and careful in what you embrace and how you embrace doing it. Um, for example, it's tradition to light a candle before sundown on Friday. Is this biblical? No. Is it traditional? Yes. Is it something nice? Yes. In my family, it's a very precious thing because it marks the end of the work week and it marks the beginning of the Sabbath in a very real, tangible way. And so it's good to look forward to that. You know, when Friday afternoon's coming around, you start looking forward to lighting the candle and that step into the rest that you get to have once the candle is lit. It's not the lighting of the candle that does it, but it's that mental marking that Sabbath has begun. Okay. Um, and so that's a very useful thing. Now, for some people, it won't mean a thing to them. You know, it would be wrong for me to try to tell you you have to do that. But for me, it works, and my family, it works. Um, and so it's a good thing. Okay. Okay, second line. Therefore, his antagonist had a reason to bully him as a Jewish Benjamite turncoat. Now, Benjamite, of course, is an insult because by then, even during the diaspora, all people of Israel, no matter what tribe you came from, began to be called Jews no matter what. So, um, and so not to but to separate him as a Benjamite as being unfaithful, it's intended to be an insult. Okay, so uh, so his antagonist would call him, a turncoat, acting contrary to Pharisaic authority and embarrassing the learned Gamliel of Jerusalem. Now, why would Gamliel be so embarrassed? Because remember, Shaul was a student of Gamliel, um, who is widely quoted in the Mishnah as a source of Jewish understanding of Torah and Halakha. Okay, but this did not seem to put a damper on Paul. He went on to say, "Has the execution tree ceased to be an offense? Let us reverse our thinking and ask his question in a different way. Should the execution tree of the Messiah be an offense? Should it be a stumbling block? Yes, of course. Okay. In the circumstance of the Galatian congregation, not the congregation, but the region, he wrote to the region, not to any particular congregation. There were several congregations around, and they had Gentiles, and so he's writing to all the Gentiles in all those congregations. So should the execution tree of the Messiah be an offense? Yeah, it should, because it's the design. It's a design to shock the Jewish mind into thinking carefully about what is true and what needs to be embraced. Okay, it's a shock element. Okay, so can it be a stumbling block still? Yes. Okay, why? Because Judaism is based essentially on one's own efforts to gain approval from God. And the gospel has an entirely different message, that we gain approval from God by embracing the sacrifice of Messiah to cleanse us of our sins and to give us a status where we can stand before God as pure and holy in a designated sense. Okay, do we sin? Yeah. Even if we're trying to not sin, do we sin? Yeah. Um, does God count it against us? Not so much. If we are dead set on doing our sins, God may, want to fix your course of action. And He will instruct us as we go along and we get better and closer to doing things the right way. But our works are not at risk or in play when it comes to our standing before God. Our embracing of what Yeshua's works had accomplished is the matter. And so, yeah, it's expected for us to learn God's lifestyle, but it's not necessary for our salvation. So that takes the pressure off. Takes the pressure off of having to live up to an expectation. Okay, and so with the expectation gone, it's permissible for us to learn because we love God, not because we've got to do it or else He's going to smush us. Okay, therefore we show our love for God by our obedience, and how interested we are in turning from our old ways into turning to His ways. Okay, verse 12. Told you it would take all day for this one. I could wish that those who trouble you would even cut themselves off, or they would cut themselves off who throw into confusion you. Okay. Um, so obviously this is intended as a polemic, as a hyperbole. Not that Paul would wish that people would be mutilated, because that's against Torah, um, and a very damaging thing to do to somebody, but rather, um, he's saying it as a hyperbolic statement, a statement in the extreme. So why? Okay. See Messianic Jews, Hebrews 10:26 to 29. The logical conclusion to Galatians 5:3. So why cut it off? Well, take a look at Matthew 7:2. Oops, did I get that wrong? Oh, Hebrews, here we are. Hebrews 10:26 to 29. For if we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a certain fearful expectation of judgment and fiery indignation which will devour the adversaries. Anyone who has rejected Moses' law dies without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much worse punishment do you suppose will be he who thought worthy? Will he be thought worthy who has trampled the Son of God underfoot, counted the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified a common thing, and insulted the Spirit of grace? So this is why Paul is speaking in such harsh terms, because you can't go back. You cannot go back. And many people who are learning a messianic lifestyle realize they can't go back to where they were. They can't go back to embracing sinful lifestyles, even though they were casually accepted or even encouraged in various places they'd been before. Now they cannot go back to it. They just can't. It makes no sense. It's harmful. Okay. And the ultimate, you can't go back, and specifically the ultimate, or one of the points made in the letter to Hebrews, is you can't go back to bulls and goats, meaning the Yom Kippur sacrifice, to count for your sins. You can't use those to atone for your sins because you've embraced the once for all in Messiah Yeshua. Now, if you want to go back to the blood of bulls and goats, what are you saying about your opinion to God of Messiah's sacrifice for you? Yeah, explain that one to him. Okay. And then our citation in Matthew. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged, and what measure you use, it will be measured back to you. Okay, what does that mean in this context? Is if you count the sacrifice of Messiah as being unworthy for you, you will be unworthy of redemption through that blood. Okay. Okay, I wish Shaul's choleric personality leads him to make intemperate use of his gift for sarcasm. This is somebody's commentary. Neither his first nor his last. For another, see Acts 23, 2-5. I think this is all part of commentary from Dr. Stern. And compare his behavior as a non-believer in Acts 8:3. The people who are bothering you about getting circumcised are neither the out of touch nor the super Jews, but the Judaizers. Okay, those who are trying to convert you to give themselves the accolades of being the ones to convert you. They would go the whole way and castrate themselves, literally, would indeed cut themselves off. The Torah declares a castrated Cohen unfit, that's a priest, unfit to perform priestly duties, Leviticus 21:20, and he who has been wounded in the stones where it has his sexual organ cut off, shall not enter the assembly of Adonai, Deuteronomy 23:2. But there is also a punning reference to being cut off from one's people, a common sanction in the Torah. Shaul wishes these pests would be deprived of contact with the Messianic community. Okay. 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 Yeah. I had a wonderful idea there. Now I've missed it, so that's okay. Carrot. Excision is the biblical penalty for certain offenses, of being cut off from the people for example, for failing to be circumcised, such as Genesis 17:14, or eating leaven on Passover, Exodus 12:19, and for committing incest, Leviticus 20:17. The Mishnah, Keritot 1:1, lists 36 offenses for which the penalty is karet, to be cut off. The list includes blasphemy, Numbers 15:30, the transgressing of the laws of circumcision, Genesis 17:30 again. Thus, they cut themselves off may not be mutilated, but removal from the community of God, and that's usually the intent. It's rare for someone to be physically cut in a punitive manner. Okay, it's you just wouldn't do it. It's not something that you would do in Jewish law or practice. Okay. So last comment from Paul. How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread? But beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, the Sadducees. Then they understood that he did not speak. He did not say to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Some of them were scribes. Okay. So the point being, and this is what Yeshua is warning us: don't be like the Pharisees or the Sadducees, even, because the Sadducees were even far more secular than the Pharisees. The Pharisees considered themselves the super Jews and were constantly inventing new rules to make themselves more holy than the average person. Some of that still lays over even into modern orthodoxy. And the attitude still lays over that, if you're orthodox and you are, following the rules, you consider yourself superior to the Gentiles around you. Okay. Now you can take, if you are observant of God's commandments, you can take joy in the fact that you are obedient and that God is certainly pleased with your obedience. But you should never take the point of considering yourself superior to others because you do that. That is not the right attitude. We should be eminently grateful to God. And like one person says, we should have the attitude of one blind beggar showing another blind beggar where to find food. Not thinking so much of ourselves, but of the work of reaching the unknowing with the knowledge and the good news of Messiah. Okay. Once again, I forgot to. Where am I? I am a little bit lost on my spot here. Oh, that's why I'm in the wrong spot. My eyes are getting a little bit tired, so I'm. Excuse me. I'm trying to get. There we are. All right. Shalom Gail. I'm reading your post here. Okay, any questions, comments, or rebukes? Ouch, you even got a valve in her heart. Ouch, ouch. Okay. Any questions, comments, or rebukes as far as what we've covered today, or by extension, anything else that just pops in your mind at this point? We're about ready to wrap it up, so if you want to type in a question or comment or even a rebuke, we'll take it. In the meantime, let me run through the ending credits, as it were. This is Simchat Yeshua Messianic Fellowship, and you can find us online at simchatyeshua.org. That's SIMCHATYESHUA.org. We also have a Facebook page, Simchat Yeshua, and you can find us there. And then, let's see, again, the YouTube stuff. Please be sure to like, to subscribe, to share with others, to ring the bell so you get notified when we go live. And, if you're interested in supporting the congregation or this channel, you can go on the website and there's a place to donate there. Okay. Okay. If there's anything else, let's certainly keep Barbara's sister, Carolyn, in prayer for good recovery and good resolution, and that she can get out of ICU quickly and to be whole and restored. Okay. Anything else to add? Otherwise, we can start closing down. Because there appears to be a bit of a delay from when I'm talking to when you're hearing, I'm going to go silent for a little while. Let the I can see I'm scrolling up and down on the screen with the text of the study notes. So when I get to the bottom, I'll know that we're done, and we should be able to close up shortly after that. So I'm going to go quiet. If there's nothing else to add, nothing else to say, and then I'll close it off when we get to that point. And that'll do. All right. Shalom. God bless you. We'll see you next Wednesday, 6 o'clock California time, right here on this channel. If you're interested in finding us to meet us at the congregation, you can get that information off the website. Okay. Shalom, and we'll see you next week here, God willing, if not on Shabbat. Okay, that'll do. God bless you. Shalom.